You are somewhere in the middle of one of the most consequential decisions your family will make, and the weight of it is specific. Not a general anxiety about getting older or about what comes next, but the particular pressure of knowing that your loved one needs a level of care you cannot provide at home, that the window for making this choice carefully is shorter than you would like, and that almost every piece of information you have been given so far has come from the facilities themselves. If that decision is still ahead of you, what you are about to hear changes how you make it. If that decision is already behind you, it changes what you look for starting tomorrow. Here is what the senior living industry would prefer your family never find out before signing anything. For years, before the current system existed, nursing homes submitted their own staffing data to the federal government through a system called OSCAR, the Online Survey Certification and Reporting Database. Researchers and federal investigators consistently documented that what facilities reported did not match what their payroll records showed. The discrepancies were not minor. They were large enough and consistent enough that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland, eventually replaced the self-reporting system entirely with a new mechanism called the payroll-based journal, which pulls data directly from facilities' payroll submissions rather than accepting what they volunteer. The star rating system on the front page of every facility's profile on the CareCompare database still displays a staffing score, but the same page that shows that score also contains something most families never look for. Buried in the same database that publishes those star ratings are three specific numbers drawn from payroll records rather than self-reports. Three numbers that most admissions coordinators will never walk you through. Three numbers that most families never find before they sign. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what those numbers are, where to find them, and the specific deficiency categories that will tell you whether a facility's inspection history represents isolated incidents or a documented pattern of harm. The first number is total nurse staffing hours per resident per day, verified against payroll records rather than self-reports. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services introduced the payroll-based journal system in 2016 specifically because the evidence that facilities were misrepresenting their own staffing to the federal government was documented and consistent. The PBJ pulls directly from payroll data submitted by the facility. The national average under this system has hovered around 3.5 to 3.7 hours per resident per day in recent years. That number sounds abstract until you convert it into a shift reality. A facility running at 3.5 hours is providing, across all nurse categories, roughly one staff member for every 7 or 8 residents during a typical daytime configuration. At night, that ratio worsens considerably. Research published across multiple peer-reviewed journals has consistently documented that facilities operating below 3 hours per resident per day show meaningfully higher rates of pressure ulcers, hospitalizations, and mortality compared to facilities with stronger staffing levels. That is not a range of opinions. That is a documented pattern across years of payroll-based data. On the CareCompare staffing page for any Medicare certified facility, you will see 2 rows for total nurse staffing. One is the self-reported figure. One is the PBJ payroll-verified figure. Most families look at only one of them. Look at both. In April of 2024, the Biden administration issued a final rule setting federal minimums of 3.48 hours per resident per day, with a required floor of 0.55 hours of registered nurse time. The nursing home industry immediately sued to block it. 2 federal courts vacated the rule. Congress passed legislation in July of 2025, delaying any enforcement until 2034. And in December of 2025, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, under the Trump administration, published an interim final rule, formally rescinding the numerical staffing minimums entirely. The rule went into effect on February 2, 2026. There is currently no federal minimum staffing requirement beyond the long-standing 8 hours of daily registered nurse coverage that existed before 2024. The point is not which administration you believe handled this correctly. The point is that the federal government documented the evidence for why minimums matter, proposed them, and the industry fought them off successfully. That data still exists. those payroll records are still public, and the gap between what facilities claim and what those records show is still visible in the same database families use when they are trying to decide where to place someone they love. The second number is weekend staffing hours, published separately in the PBJ data. Research using national PBJ data from 2017 through 2018 found that registered nurse hours on weekends were approximately 42% lower than weekday levels at the same facilities. Not at different facilities, at the same buildings, under the same management, with the same star rating on the wall. The significance of the weekend gap is not administrative. Residents do not deteriorate on a schedule that respects business hours. Falls, infections, pressure injuries, and medication reactions do not wait for Monday morning. A facility can maintain a strong average weekly staffing score while running at dramatically reduced levels on Saturday and Sunday. The aggregate star rating does not show you that. The PBJ weekend data does. Most families touring a facility on a Tuesday afternoon are seeing a version of that facility that does not exist on Saturday night. They are meeting a staffing configuration designed in part around the tour calendar. The third number requires 15 seconds of arithmetic, and CMS does not calculate it for you. The health inspection summary on CareCompare shows the total number of deficiency citations across the 3 most recent annual surveys, plus any complaint investigations. Facilities with higher citation counts, and particularly those with citations that recur across multiple consecutive survey cycles, have documented patterns of harm. But the composite score has a structural flaw. A 300-bed facility with 18 citations is proportionally a fundamentally different situation than a 60-bed facility with 10 citations. The per-resident citation rate, which you calculate by dividing total citations by the facility's average census, normalizes for size and gives you a number that means something you can compare across facilities of different scales. CMS does not display this calculation. It takes a single arithmetic step on your part. That is not a coincidence. That is a business model. The data that would most efficiently allow families to identify understaffed and citation-heavy facilities is available in the same public database families already use. It is simply not surfaced, not explained during admissions tours, and not offered as a comparison tool by the facilities being evaluated. The information asymmetry is not accidental. If someone in your family is navigating any of this right now, consider subscribing. This channel publishes investigations like this regularly, and the next one covers something that affects an even larger number of families than what we have covered today. I have looked at a lot of these inspection records across dozens of facilities and ownership groups, and the deficiency pattern that appears most consistently in facilities with serious resident harm is not spread evenly across citation categories. It concentrates in 2 specific federal tag numbers that appear in the inspection reports available as full documents on the CareCompare page. The part of this that most people miss is not the total citation count. It is which categories those citations fall into, because certain deficiency categories predict serious harm at a rate that others do not. FTAG 689 covers accident hazards and failure to maintain a safe environment. FTAG 684 covers quality of care and the failure to provide services consistent with professional standards of practice. These 2 categories, when they appear multiple times across consecutive survey cycles, indicate not a compliance blip, but a documented operational pattern. A facility can carry 8 citations in housekeeping and laundry categories and present a very different risk profile than a facility with 4 citations split between F689 and F684. The inspection report is available as a downloadable PDF on the CareCompare page for every certified facility. The full report names the deficiency, describes the incident or pattern that triggered the citation, and, in many cases, identifies how long the condition existed before it was documented. Most families never open it. The admissions coordinator does not offer it. The star rating on the wall does not reflect it. But it is there, and it has been there, and the documented history of why the payroll-based journal system had to be created in the first place, replacing the previous self-reporting system entirely, tells you something about what the industry had been doing with the previous arrangement. Facilities were reporting staffing levels that their own payroll did not support, consistently enough that the federal government changed the system. The data is now harder to manipulate. It is still largely ignored by families who do not know where to look for it. Everything before this point is what the industry hopes your family never finds before the tour is scheduled and the deposit is ready. What follows is what they are genuinely afraid you will do with it. The three numbers are on the Care Compare website, which is maintained by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services in Baltimore, Maryland. Here is how to find each one and what to do with what you find. First, go to the Care Compare website and search the facility by name or zip code. Navigate to the Staffing tab. Find the row labeled Total Nurse Staffing Hours per Resident per Day, and look for the column marked Payroll-Based Journal, not the self-reported figure. Compare the two numbers. A gap of more than 10% between the self-reported figure and the PBJ figure is a discrepancy worth raising directly with the admissions director, in writing, before you sign anything. Time required, 5 minutes. Cost, none. What it prevents? Signing a contract with a facility that has documented a pattern of misrepresenting its own staffing to the federal agency responsible for rating it. Second, on the same staffing tab, locate the weekend staffing row. Compare the weekend figure to the weekday figure. A gap of more than 25% is a warning sign that the facility's operational model treats weekend care as a reduced priority configuration. National PBJ data shows registered nurse hours on weekends run roughly 40% lower than on weekdays at the same facilities. Time required, 2 minutes. Cost, none. What it prevents? Placing your loved one in a care environment that operates fundamentally differently from the one you toured on a weekday afternoon. Third, on the Health Inspections tab, note the total number of deficiency citations listed across the last 3 survey cycles. Divide that number by the facility's average number of residents, which appears on the overview page. If the result exceeds 0.15, ask the admissions coordinator to walk you through which citation categories account for the highest frequency. Time required, 3 minutes and 1 calculation. Cost, none. What it prevents? Missing a concentration of serious citations in high harm deficiency categories that the composite rating does not surface. Fourth, download the full inspection report PDF from the Health Inspections tab and search the document for FTAG 689 and FTAG 684. Note how many times each appears and in how many consecutive survey cycles. If either appears in all 3 of the most recent surveys, that is a documented operational pattern, not a compliance anomaly. Time required, 10 to 15 minutes. Cost, none. What it prevents? Signing with a facility that has demonstrated a recurring failure to maintain basic care standards across inspectors, across years, and across administrations. Fifth, if the facility's PBJ staffing number is lower than its self-reported staffing number by more than 10%, request the discrepancy explanation in writing before signing. This is a documented request. The admissions coordinator is not required to answer it, but the act of asking and the nature of the response will tell you more about the facility's operating culture than anything on the tour. Time required, 1 email or 1 conversation. Cost, none. What it prevents? Entering a contractual relationship with a facility that has already demonstrated it manages its own data presentation strategically. The total time investment for this complete protocol is under 30 minutes. The average cost of a single preventable hospitalization from a pressure ulcer or an undetected fall at an understaffed facility runs into the tens of thousands of dollars, in addition to the ongoing monthly cost of nursing home care, which currently averages between $8,000 and $12,000 per month nationally, depending on location and care level. The 30 minutes is not a formality. It is the margin between a decision made with the industry's information and a decision made with yours. Before this video, you were someone the nursing home admissions process was designed to move through a tour, a brochure, and a star rating on a wall toward a signature. You were someone who had no particular reason to know that the payroll-based journal system replaced an older, self-reporting arrangement after federal investigators documented consistent discrepancies between what facilities claimed and what their payrolls showed. That registered nurse coverage on weekends runs roughly 40% below weekday levels at the same facilities, or that two specific federal deficiency categories predict serious resident harm at a rate that makes them worth searching for specifically in every inspection report you read. You are not that person anymore. You know where the data lives, how to read it, and which 30 minutes determine whether you are making a decision the industry designed for you or a decision you actually made for yourself. If you are currently navigating any of this and something in this video matched your situation exactly, share it in the comments because you are not the only one and your experience is evidence. Every video on this channel is built around one principle. Your family deserves to know how this system actually works before you are inside it. Subscribe so the next investigation reaches you in time to use it.